Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's meeting of Rugby Borough Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Seb Lowe, Chairman of this meeting. Before we begin, I'm obliged to read out the following notice written on this card. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, therefore, please could I ask that you make your way down the main staircase, out of the main doors of the Town Hall, and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the Council will then give instructions when it is safe to re-enter the building. Moving then to the agenda, the first item on tonight's agenda is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of October. Does anyone from Cabinet object to me signing these minutes? Fine, thank you. I will do that now. Item number 2 is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, Executive Director?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Chief Executive, my apology to you. It's difficult to get used to. Item number 3 is declarations of interest. First of all, do we have any declarations of non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? I see no hands raised. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Again, no hands are raised. And finally, any notice under Section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Okay, no hands raised. Moving into item number 4, which is question time. Chief Executive, do we have any questions?
There are no questions, Chair.
Thank you. And we move then to item number 5, which, if I may say so without stealing Councillor Picker's thunder, is one of the most exciting items I think we've considered as a Cabinet, certainly as long as I can remember. Councillor Picker, it's with you. Would you like to introduce the item?
More than happy to, Chair. So this is the Town Centre Regeneration Strategy, and it's been one that's been long in the making and will deliver for our ambitions that I hope we share across this council for the town centre. It takes a long-term view of the opportunities for the town centre, including redevelopment of a number of key sites, both publicly and privately owned. And it's important to see the strategy in the context of the wider development plans we have in the borough, which we might talk about in a little bit. And also, it's a clear-eyed view of the future of the town centre. We can't rewind the clock to where we were a number of years ago. The nature of town centres is changing, not just here in Rugby, but across the town centre. And so we need a long-term strategy that will deliver on the future of town centres. So the strategy looks at a mix of retail, leisure and residential. And I think what the focus of town centres, including Rugby's, will be moving forwards is they'll be experiential rather than traditional retail. People will be looking for places to go, things to do, opportunities, rather than the old traditional view of just going and doing your shopping. We're already seeing some of this shift. We've seen new restaurants open, even in just recent months, and the strategy provides the framework to deliver and accelerate that process. It's important to look at this as a long-term strategy. There aren't any quick fixes, there aren't any silver bullets. If there were, we'd have done them. I dare say town centres up and down the country would have done them, but we don't face a unique situation here. But I do think we have some unique opportunities, given the heritage of the town centre, the tradition we have to fall back on, and the fact that everyone in the world knows rugby because of the game of rugby. And next year, we will have a great opportunity to put us on the map. And again, there is more things on that later on this evening. The strategy identifies a number of key frames that we can work on: movement, public realm, open space, development and delivery. All of these will result in their own work streams, and we'll be working with businesses, investors, stakeholders, other public sector organisations. This is not just us moving on our own. This is a much more wide-ranging strategy than that. And it does acknowledge the challenges that we face. You know, I think we all know, just walking up and down the town centre, there are challenges there, and we need to accept those challenges and think about ways to overcome them. So in response, the strategy brings forward a number of opportunities and a vision to look at the use and nature of the town centre in a decade's time, and how we can bring that forward through a series of interconnecting projects. And it doesn't just look at the High Street, Sheep Street, that area. It looks at the whole of the town centre, going all the way down to the station and that gateway into the town centre, and making that more connected, something that I know has been brought up in this chamber on a number of occasions. The development that we're looking at in the town centre will be a shift towards mixed use. As I've already said, it won't just be shops, it'll be leisure, it'll be retail, and it'll be residential. So we'll have a dynamic street scene, a mix of stories and designs, and by bringing residential into the town centre, we'll also bring footfall into the town centre. And with that, we will need to better link the station, the transport network, issues like Corporation Street, every way, that gateway into the town. And we'll be working with partners to look at the best way we can deliver that, talking to our colleagues at the county and the highways department, and taking that forwards as a holistic view of the town centre. However, I did say there are no quick and easy wins. There are some things we can do in the short term. I've already touched on what we can do next year with the bicentenary of the game of rugby and the Rugby World Cup. There are opportunities there to refresh the town centre. There's also the coronation of His Majesty the King. And again, there are opportunities there to deliver some immediate wins, particularly in terms of the market and refreshing the market next year. So I think we want to see more frequent events as part of this strategy, and we know from having spoken to residents as part of the consultation that we've done on this, that these are valued, and there are a lot of interest in doing more with the town centre to bring people in, and that in itself will help support businesses that are thriving there. So that's the strategy. It's broad and it's flexible because we don't know exactly what the coming years will hold. There are opportunities for a lot of redevelopment at different sites that we own and that others own, and we will be delivering that. So I hope you'll support it this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Picker, and I will second this for you. It'd be an honour to do so. What I would say, just to reiterate some of the points that Councillor Picker has made, is that he is quite right when he says that the problems that we face in our town centre are very far from being unique. The problems that we face are caused by the fact that, quite simply, the town centre of the past, based around chain store retail, is very much a thing of the past. It's been killed by Amazon. It's been killed by out-of-town retail parks. Town centres that work are those that offer a destination and those that offer a variety of different uses, and that is exactly what this strategy is designed to create. And I'm proud to second it for you, Councillor Picker. Councillor O'Rourke, any comments from you?
Thank you, Chair. There is a lot of positive stuff in there, but you are quite right. We're in very challenging times at the moment, and I just wondered what the greatest risk is in terms of delivering this plan. Obviously, you've got your short, medium and long term. What are the greatest risks? And have you received any direct feedback since this has gone out and been published? Have you received any sort of feedback from the local businesses? Because we certainly have. I'd just be interested in what the feedback you have had. And I do think there are opportunities, and it, obviously as a town centre councillor, I'm very passionate about the town centre, and it's somewhere both Ish and I actually go most days. So yeah, we do welcome it, and I think it's been a long time in the making, but I do have some concerns. I've only recently seen the paper. Yes, you did engage us individually about different ideas that we had, but it's disappointing that we didn't have a chance to all sit down and go through the plan together before it was actually published in the name of partnership working and being a town centre councillor. Thank you.
Okay. In terms of the biggest risk, I think the biggest risk we face is probably going to be the wider economic picture. things that are outside of this council's control, but I think there are signs of recovery in the economy. So, and we've also seen, as I alluded to in my comments, in recent months we've seen new businesses opening in the town centre. So I'm confident. I think, you know, there are things that we don't know over what will happen in the future, but I'm sure that this strategy, well, I know this strategy gives us the tools we'll need to respond to that. In terms of consultation with businesses, we've carried out consultation with businesses throughout this process, including 2 formal consultations. There was a business breakfast earlier this year which laid out the key themes, and I am certainly talking with officers about having a further such engagement with the businesses in the new year. And of course, councillors.
I'm sure you will make your voice heard, Councillor O'Rourke. Councillor Roodhouse, any comments from you?
Just a few. Recognising that it's going to go to full council, so I have no doubt there'll be a further debate up there. Quite a lengthy report, and as has been said, been some time arriving here for us to have a look at. Interesting read in places. There's a couple of initial thoughts, and you know, our group will engage with the process, and we will engage with the discussions around this that are going to have to take place. I mean, the one point is on page 71, 4.46. It talks about governance and accountability. I was wondering whether you've given any thoughts to that, and whether you can explain a bit more as to what your thoughts are as the portfolio holder around that, because that will be key around this document. And the other bit, for medium, short and long term, which is just, but there's nothing put around that. I can understand that in a way, that a consultant wouldn't want to do that, but I would have thought from a local authority perspective we would have wanted to prioritise out more clearly some of the work streams which you've mentioned which are going to come forward, and that will sort of, if you like, come back to the governance and accountability around this, because this is going to need some a bit of grit behind it in the sense of funding and money. Not quite clear where all that's going to come from. And of course, to get the development quantum, as talked about within the report, we're going to have those short, medium and long term more clearly defined. It's quite clear to me that some of the aspirations in there are going to take years, and by the time you arrive at them, the landscape out there will be different. And of course, this whole process was started with a previous chief officer, and we now have another chief officer who picked it up and had to run with it at the time, and the consultants had to rejig things as well. So we've got probably a slightly different report than when we started off with at the beginning. But as I said, we will engage with the process going forward. There'll be more to say at full council, I'm sure, by quite a few people at that point.
Okay. So I agree with you in terms of delivery, that this is going to take time, and it's going to take a tight grip. I have full confidence in our officers and in the chief officer to deliver this. I know it's been top of their priorities, and it's certainly top of my priority and the leader of the council's priorities. We have received the full award of UK Shared Prosperity funding, some of which, as you'll know from previous reports, has been identified to deliver on this strategy. But once we formally adopt it, we'll set out a plan for its activation, and obviously we'll continue to engage with councillors as to how that delivery is put in place.
And I think just to build slightly on Councillor Pickett's point, I think one of the primary purposes of a document like this is precisely to serve as an investment prospectus. And one of the primary purposes of having a document like this is to enable us to use it as a vehicle to attract precisely the kind of funding that you're referring to, Councillor Roodhouse.
I don't think Councillor Pickett answered the question about governance and accountability as outlined in the paragraph by the consultants.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to sort of come back to you or have a word with you after the meeting as regards that.
Okay, I will now put this to a vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That's carried unanimously. Excellent. Moving on then to item number 6. Tonight is very much the Ian Picker show. And so again with you, Councillor Picker, we have the local plan review.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I suspect this one might be almost as well received as the previous item. We are required to conduct a local plan review as part of our statutory duty every 5 years. So the decision we're really looking at is whether we go for a full review or a partial review and the timescales that we look at for that. Having discussed and considered the option with the officers, it's my view that we should go ahead with a full review of the local plan, and there are a number of reasons for that. So it comes alongside the review of housing and employment needs assessment that's been conducted amongst the Warwickshire councils. So the first thing I want to make clear is we're not moving on our own independently here. We're working with partner councils. We've got an evidence base done on our behalf by ICENI, which recognises some of the challenges that we face and also how we can move forwards, particularly in respect to the duty to cooperate. I know that these figures are going to be the basis for discussions moving forward, and the thing that I want to make clear is we're not discussing the specific figures in the report this evening. We're discussing whether we move forward with a review or not. However, these figures are going to be used by our colleagues in the other parts of the county. My view is that the review of the local plan should be evolutionary, not revolutionary, but we need to face the facts that a lot of the evidence that formed the local plan as adopted was gathered in 2015, 16, 17, and I think it's fair to say that since then the world has changed in a few ways. So I think we need to make sure that our local plan is still sound in the world we find ourselves. And a couple of areas we can do this. The first thing I want to touch on is the environmental considerations. We adopted the local plan, and then shortly afterwards we declared a climate emergency. But our ability to implement some of the climate change strategy is constrained by the local plan as adopted and the policies that we have in place. So a full review of the local plan will allow us to look again in more detail at what we want to do to deliver on those climate change aspirations and introduce the policies and the emerging best practice from elsewhere in order to deliver those goals. Secondly, the economic impact. We've obviously come through a pandemic following the adoption of the local plan, and we need to reconsider the changes to our local economy and the town centre. So a full review will allow us to make the appropriate decisions for the town centre and consider the shape of Rugby moving forwards, and want to ensure that there's a balance of employment within the town and within the borough. So we also have the opportunity to deliver more employment opportunities and further growth in the town through a local plan review. I also want to touch on an issue that's been raised in this chamber. I think one of the first things I did when I was appointed to this portfolio was went to scrutiny committee, where members spoke to me about their concern over homes in multiple occupation and the policies that we have not got in place through the adopted local plan to deal with that. Now, I seem to recall promising that at the earliest opportunity, under a local plan review, we would look to implement that policy, and I'm happy to make that commitment again this evening and next week and at any other time I need to, because I do recognise that that's an issue that needs addressing, but we can't address it without a review of the local plan. So all of these policies and challenges that we face does need a review of the local plan to make sure we've got the policies in place that are right for Rugby. And finally, I do just want to touch on the risk if we don't undertake a local plan review. We'd risk losing control of our development plan if it was judged to be out of date. We need to ensure that we have an up-to-date and sound plan, otherwise it becomes harder to resist speculative developments and to deliver the infrastructure we need to support the growth. So for those reasons, I think it is appropriate that we consider a full review of the local plan on this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. Very well said. I'm happy to second you. Just one additional point that you made a number of excellent points there, which I would not attempt to improve on. One final additional point I will make is that the difference in cost between a partial review and a full review is actually very small, such that if we're doing it, we may as well do the full review. Councillor O'Rourke, I got a feeling Councillor Picker might have nicked the question you were going to ask, so have you got another one?
He hasn't. Thank you, Councillor Pickering. I do sort of really very happy actually that it's finally going to happen and there will be something in the local plan. I know it's something that you've inherited. I suppose for me, and we won't go over the old debates about the ONS data and where we're at, and I think you're absolutely right. Because of all those things, there does need to be a full review. So welcome that. I suppose it's been such a fast-moving thing over the last few years. I mean, we're building a lot quicker than most other areas, and I don't quite see how that's managed within a plan, but perhaps, you know, it will be different with the new plan, because the biggest challenge is when you build so fast, apart from getting stuff signed off and adopted about 10 years later, the biggest challenge is making sure the infrastructure issues are all in place. And because we're building at such a, you know, quick rate, so quickly, that, you know, has proved quite challenging for people. We've seen it with the schools. I mean, I'm not going to go on and on about it, but we all know what the challenges are. And I'd like to think that, you know, there'll be due diligence around that in the sort of new plan, because it has led to lots of sort of challenges for local residents. Thank you.
I don't disagree with anything you've just said. I think one of the things that we have seen, and I think where you're referring to in terms of the scale of delivery, is at Halton. But Halton is, to my mind, an exemplar of how you deliver houses and infrastructure at scale. So I would hope that some of the lessons we've learned from delivering that can be applied as we move forward with the local plan and address some of the concerns that you and others have raised.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you. I think this is about number 4 local plan for me. Can't remember really. I lose track. Keeps coming around when it comes around, as it does. I suppose a number of points. Again, this is going to full council, and I have no doubt there'll be comments and things to be said there. I think there will be quite a robust debate about housing numbers, and I think that needs to be had, to be honest, because if you look at the ICNE report and read through that and have a look at that, clearly they're placing down there that we could go to a lower number than numbers that I've heard. So there's a trajectory around that. And it may be, you know, can we get them in to speak to councillors and do a presentation about that report, rather than just landing in council papers and actually looks like you're being banjaxed into, oh, we must do this because if we don't do this. And I think, you know, I don't like that approach, to be honest, on taking things forward, because it just feels like you're being jumped into it and goes against me when you actually could be working with councillors about this. And I mean, it does pour out in that paper also, is the economic activity in Rugby is not as good as it could be in the county. The GVA is lower in particular areas. So we're not just talking about housing here, we're talking about the NVQ qualifications and other bits and pieces to do with skills and employability as well. So there's some quite interesting particular bits within that report, I think, which I think we need to realise as elected members, that it's not all rosy out there. We might be growing fast, but actually the GVA bit compared to other bits of Warwickshire is not as good as it could be as well on that. And then there is a debate, if you're going to have this debate around the housing numbers, about lifetime homes and affordability, because if we're going to talk about affordable homes, you know, and you're going to have a number, how many of those homes are going to be affordable and at what particular brackets, which I've seen again allude to on that particular point. Like I say, it's going to be going to full council, so there needs to be, again, some, I think, laying out whether we support it or not will be quite interesting. We haven't had the group meeting until Friday. But I think that there are those issues, and of course there is the green belt issue, which you're asking to be considered in this. Actually, should we be nibbling away at the green belt and starting to utilise that at the same time for the housing projection? Rugby as a town has had to be the centre of everything that's gone on with most local plans, and hence why we have Halton elsewhere, Corston and those forget, you know, will the debate change? Will that debate be taken forward? So we'll see what else is said at full council, but I do feel that we should be having from those consultants who've written that report, and it's been cross all authorities, as you said, in Warwickshire and including Coventry, there should be a base understanding for all elected members in this chamber about what that report is saying. So actually we all start from a base of knowledge instead of being just jumped into this process.
Well, I agree with what you've just said, and I'm quite happy to say that we will be able to set up a meeting with Icenian councillors as part of this process. As I said, this evening and next week is not about the final numbers or the final shape of the local plan. It's do we go on down this route and have a full review of the local plan. So assuming that we do take that course, then yeah, it will be a discussion, and I'm happy to see whatever meetings we can set up.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. Right, I'll put it to a vote then. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. And staying with you, Councillor Picker, at item number 7, we have the Planning Enforcement Local Plan 2022.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to be slightly briefer on these items, I think, for the sake of everyone. So this is a report of planning enforcement in the borough. I think it's, again, something that has been long since needed. It sets out the guidance for residents, councillors and officers relating to planning enforcement, and speaks for itself. So I hope that it will be adopted.
Does indeed speak for itself. I think we all of us in this chamber agree that planning enforcement needs strengthening in this council. There has been, as others have said, a lot of developments in Rugby, and therefore it's right and proper that we have a robust planning enforcement team in place. So I'm very happy to second you myself again, Councillor Picker. Anything from you, Councillor O'Rourke? Councillor Roodhouse?
I agree with you, Councillor Lowe. We need stronger enforcement.
Well, what a beautiful moment of harmony this is. In that case, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And back by popular demand for the last time this evening, Councillor Picker, Development Management Service Review, item number 8.
Similar to the previous item, I'm happy to move this one as written. I think, again, I'd just like to thank the officers for all the reports this evening. And again, the report speaks for itself, and I think it's important that we undertake the Development Management Service Review.
Quite right too. I'll second you. Councillor O'Rourke, any comments? Councillor Roodhouse? Marvellous. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, item number 9 is within the Leisure and Wellbeing portfolio, and as Councillor Roberts has sent his apologies, I will move item number 9, which is the arrangements for the town centre for the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III. As people can see from the report, this is about earmarking some funding to allow for 2 principal streams of activity. The street dressing, so the erection of bunting and so on in the town centre, and also, more excitingly, a public viewing in Caldecott Park, so a community event to enable members of the community to gather in what is, in my view, one of the most beautiful public parks in the entire United Kingdom to watch this historic and momentous event. I will move that from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Poole. Councillor O'Rourke, any comments? Councillor Roodhouse?
It should be quite a nice day, shouldn't it?
Certainly should. Couldn't help noticing that Councillor Alanak has stormed off in disgust, but I assume that means she's got somewhere else to go. Right, in that case, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour, please show. Hear, hear. God save the King. And the second item under the Leisure and Wellbeing portfolio is the Bicentenary of Rugby Union, which is obviously taking place next year. Again, albeit it's a very different sort of event, this is a momentous event, massively important specifically to the heritage of this town, and it is therefore right and proper that we commemorate it in an appropriate fashion. So this is about earmarking the funds to enable us to do so. Again, set out in the report are a number of the number of different proposed items. There's something around the communication budget, again, some dressing options, a series of community events, and some activity in schools as well. So lots for us all to consider there to commemorate this momentous event, and it gives me great pleasure to move it. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that one, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Councillor O'Rourke.
Yes, just to sort of echo what you're saying, it is a fantastic opportunity to celebrate the game. Of course, it's the World Cup as well. So, yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roodhouse.
And I'm sure the Mayor for the year will be taking part in most of the activities that are happening during that year. But yeah, no, it's only right and proper that we should. I mean, the last World Cup, we had a great time in the town and everybody enjoyed it, so it's only right that we should celebrate that. I think it's quite nice of you as leader here, a football man, to echo the strengths of rugby.
Councillor Roodhouse, I may be a football fan, but that does not mean I cannot endorse wholeheartedly this town's glorious sporting heritage, and it is right and proper that we commemorate it in this way. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 11 is the Finance and Performance Monitoring 2022-2023 report, which is with you, Councillor Robbins.
Oh, sorry, 585,000, I'm not going to repeat myself, over the position reported in the June meeting. Members will also note that the main pressures are due to lower than expected use of council car parks and leisure facilities, and other areas also that have not produced the amount of revenue as was expected. Many areas have not yet recovered from the pandemic, unfortunately. There are also a number of savings due to staff vacancies, and a request for these savings to be transferred to the corporate savings target is included in the recommendation. Communities and homes also report of a pressure of 303,000 from quarter one, and this variance is due to underachievement on lifeline services, sorry, I can't even read my own typing, and an increase in utility costs. There are also pressures on operations, traded services, and of 414,000, and again from quarter one, the picture is due mainly from the shortfall in green waste subscriptions, increased cost of fuel, and of course salary increases that we have now been agreed. Moving on slightly, there are savings, which is good news, of 1.163 million from quarter one due to using capital receipts rather than borrowing, and there is some slippage on last year's capital programme. So all in all, it's not quite as bad as it first appears. Details of the pressures and the key issues can be found in the report and in the appendices. Members should also note the performance summary at section 6 and details of corporate strategy delivery plan. And the performance at Appendix 3 is also a list of statistics and KPIs that will form analysis, and it is aimed to put the dashboard in place at the end of quarter 3. So that should be far easier for people to read and to understand, which I think is something that's been needed for a while. Having said that, I've moved the recommendation and have a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Councillor Poole has indicated he would like to second you.
I'll second the motion, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that comprehensive presentation. I'd also like to join you in commending the fact that the report now contains KPIs and a number of performance measures to enable us to assess how this council is performing more accurately. Councillor O'Rourke, I'll turn to you. Any comments from you? Councillor Roodhouse.
Yes, it's nice to see the performance indicators coming through, the new set or the new suite. And of course, there's still a lot of back stuff which is not there because they're starting from day one, aren't they? So we're having to build these up to start to see the trends. And I look forward to the move when we can get it onto Power BI and actually start to get the dashboards which are out there, which the public should be able to see as well, about how well the council is performing and the assurances that it should give them.
I couldn't agree with you more, Councillor Roodhouse. It's very important that these statistics are publicly available, and it's very important that the public are able to see how the council is performing, because, of course, the public pays for this council. In that case, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. And then, another good news story. With you, Councillor Crane, we have access to energy efficiency measures, updated EcoFlex statement of intent for Rugby. Councillor Crane, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a good news story. It's essentially an updated statement of intent for the energy company's obligation scheme, the ECO scheme, and that's a government energy efficiency scheme which is administered by Ofgem, and it's putting a legal obligation on suppliers to reduce heating costs for low-income and vulnerable households by delivering energy efficiency and heating measures. And local authorities and suppliers have to identify households that meet the eligibility criteria. And essentially this report's updating the original statement of intent, which referred to the Eco 3 scheme, which has now been superseded by Eco 4, which runs up to March 2026. So we needed to do an updated statement of intent for this new round of funding. It was also one of the agreed work streams of the Scrutiny Committee Cost of Living Progress Report in November. And I just wanted to mention as well, for people that might not have seen, that the government announced last week that it's going to be doing another scheme to help a wider customer base, so people who are struggling with the increases in energy bills. So I think that will be really helpful as well. And there's a consultation ongoing on that at the moment. So I move the report as written, and I hope everyone will agree that it's great to see this help for vulnerable households and helping them to reduce energy bills and also reducing emissions as well.
Thank you, Councillor Crane. Well, I certainly agree with you, but I'll give other members of the Cabinet opportunity to second you if they wish. Councillor Robbins has a hand up, so Councillor Robbins can second. Councillor O'Rourke, any comments from you?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, welcome the report. I suppose the only thing I'd raise is identification, administration. You know, is it going to be very resource intent, or will be? I mean, have we got any idea about the sort of numbers we're looking at? I suppose during COVID, it was something that we had to look at in terms of vulnerable households, and it was challenging at times to get some of the information that we actually needed about vulnerable households. I think we'd all agree that it was a little bit challenging. So I just wondered how we're going to ensure that nobody gets left behind, and you know, what are the resource implications? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. I mean, officers, I'm aware, have got very close ties with the community, both through tenants that they know, but also through the different agencies that they're working with. So I'm sure that they will do everything they can to try and identify those vulnerable households. And I would say to all members here, you know, if people know of households, I mean, I guess feed them in as well. Just make sure no one's missed. But I'm assured that officers are doing all they can to identify everybody.
Thank you for that. And obviously communication is key, so perhaps that's something, well, I'd certainly like to have a chat with you about that, getting the message out there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Roodhouse.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's communication is really important, and I suppose one of the elements is that as elected members representing our wards, we all know about some of this, and it's a matter of firing that information back into the system, really. But it is a welcome move, but of course that still leaves a lot of private properties out there which are in need of, you know, further work, energy saving and the rest of it. And with Act on Energy and all the other organisations, there's got to be a real concentration on that, and this is just one part of this jigsaw really that's going ahead.
Thank you, Councillor O'Rourke. I mean, I think there is a lot of information out there, and we're, you know, trying to make that available on the website, so hopefully people can be directed where they need to be.
Okay, thank you. We have a proposer and a seconder. I'll move the vote then. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And then item number 13 is with you, Councillor Poole. It is the stray dog policy and procedures.
Thank you, Chairman. The Environmental Protection Act 1990, section 149, sets out the legal duties of this council on the seizure of stray dogs. The stray dog policy and procedures formally sets out how the council discharges its duties. It covers it all in the report, and I move the report as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Poole. Very comprehensive and very necessary report, in my view. Do we have a seconder from the rest of Cabinet? Councillor Lawrence, thank you. Councillor O'Rourke, any comments? Councillor Roodhouse, any comments? Clearly, we're all in agreement about this report then, so I'll move that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried. And then staying with you, Councillor Poole, we have Safer Streets 4 grant funding.
Thank you, Chairman. A very necessary report, but I'd like to move an amendment, please, on the recommendations at number 2. It's a typing error, and it should read, it states 21, 22, 22, 23. It should read 22, 23, 23, 24. And with that amendment, I'd like to move the report as printed, please.
Thank you, Councillor Poole. I have just covertly, can't get my words out now, consulted. Thank you very much. It's been a long day. I've consulted with the Chief Executive, and I gather that after we've got a seconder, we're going to need to put your amendment to the vote. But first of all, do we have a seconder for the report? Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Can we now put Councillor Poole's amendment to the vote, please? Check we're all happy with it as a Cabinet. And we all are. Marvellous. Right, Councillor O'Rourke, do you have any comments on Councillor Poole's report as amended? No. Okay, Councillor Roodhouse, do you have any comments on Councillor Poole's report?
Just a couple of ones. I mean, this is quite an important item, really, in relation to what's there. So it's welcome that it's coming through, because we do need to make safer streets and the rest of it in there. And it's, hence, it's some important stuff that's within this.
Thank you for the comments. Yes, it is very important, safer streets. There's a Safer Streets 5 on its way, so the council will know about that. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, as amended, I will now put that report to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And then the next 2 items are on block, so I consider them together. Fine. So we have the Treasury Management Mid-Year Update 22 to 23 and the calendar of meetings, which I'll move from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Robbins, you won that time. Any comments from you, Councillor O'Rourke? Councillor Roodhouse? Right, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item number 17, we have a motion to exclude the public under section 100A subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 to consider the following resolution under section 100A subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972. The public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I move that from the chair. Will you second me, Councillor Poole?
I will second that, Chairman. Thank you
very much. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Could we cease the